So I want you to close your eyes for a second and just picture this. You are standing in the back of a tiny, kind of dimly lit theater.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah. It's Rhode Island, and the year is 1946.
Right after the war.
Exactly. And up on the stage, there's this man in a really crisp United States Navy uniform, and he is staring incredibly intently into the eyes of a sailor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's actually hypnotizing him right in front of this totally silent, completely captivated audience.
That is an intense visual.
It is. But then, meanwhile, just off stage, like right in the shadows, there are two women who are quietly coordinating this truly monumental task.
Wait, what tasks?
Figuring out how to feed 40 hungry people on post-war food rations.
Oh, man. Yeah, that really is monumental.
Right, and the thing is, when we think of magic, we usually don't picture that specific scene at all.
No, we really don't. I mean, the cultural memory of magic is it's almost entirely focused on the lone genius.
Right, the guy in the spotlight.
Exactly. We picture this grand, ornate theater, a blinding spotlight, and this larger-than-life personality. Someone like a Houdini.
Totally. Someone who possesses all these dark secrets that the rest of us just don't have.
Right. And we focus so much on that isolated performer that we completely miss the actual ecosystem that kept the craft alive.
And that brings us to our mission for this deep dive today, because we really want to invite you, our listener, to sort of step out of that blinding spotlight and into those shadows just off stage.
It's a fascinating place to look.
It really is. And we're pulling from this amazing stack of source material today. It's a collection of reports from the 1946 issues of a magazine called The Linking Ring.
Which is such a great source. So the Linking Ring was, and actually still is, the official publication of the International Brotherhood of Magicians.
Okay, so it's like a professional journal.
Yeah, you can think of it as a trade journal.
Okay.
But in the mid-1940s, it functioned as this really vital lifeline. It connected all these localized chapters, which they called rings, all across the globe.
And out of all those dispatches, out of all those rings, we are going to reconstruct the incredibly intimate world of one very specific group.
Right, the William E. Baker Ring, number 44 of Rhode Island.
Yes. Or, as they affectionately called themselves, the big ring in the little state.
I love that.
It's so good. And look, our goal today isn't just to figure out, how they did their cool card tricks.
Right, we're doing a deeper dive than that.
Exactly. We are exploring a very specific post-World War II community. Like, how did they organize themselves? Who were the standout characters in the room?
And what actually held them together when the entire world outside was just completely shifting.
Right. So to understand the magic they were doing, we first kind of have to understand the room where it happened, right? And the rules they agreed to play by.
Absolutely. So Ring 44 met on the first Friday of every single month. But they didn't meet in the places you might expect for a 1940s fraternal club.
I actually want to pause on that for a second. Because whenever I picture mid-century men's clubs, I always imagine them in, like, a rented VFW hall or maybe the back room of a smoky diner.
Yeah, that's the classic image.
But for listeners who might not have that historical context, what exactly is a VFW hall and why was that the standard meeting place back then?
Sure. So VFW stands for Veterans of Foreign Wars. And after major global conflicts, these local VFW halls just sprouted up in almost every single town in America.
Like little community hubs.
Exactly. They were community centers, they had bars, they were event spaces primarily for returning soldiers. And because they were cheap to rent and they had this built-in sense of camaraderie, almost every amateur hobby group, union, or club in the 40s and 50s held their monthly meetings in a VFW hall.
Okay, so it was basically the default sandbox for American civic life.
Perfectly said. It was the default. But the thing is, Ring 44 didn't use the default sandbox.
He did not.
No, they met at a highly specific, dedicated venue. It's called Baker's Miniature Theater, and it was right on Observatory Avenue in North Providence.
And that venue is crucial to this whole story, isn't it?
It really is, because it belonged to William E. Bill Baker, which is why the ring was actually named in his honor. It was a tribute to his sheer dedication to Rhode Island magic.
But he wasn't just, like, a wealthy benefactor who slapped his name on the door and walked away.
Yeah, he built what the sources call a fine stage for them to use, and he was a highly active performing member himself.
Yeah, the sources mention he performed some incredibly professional level acts, like things like flying cards and that nest of boxes.
And his absolute masterpiece, the linking rings.
Okay, wait, before we go any further, for anyone listening who hasn't been to a magic show recently, what exactly is the linking rings illusion? Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it is honestly one of the oldest and most classic illusions in all of magic.
Okay.
Basically, the magician holds up several completely solid metal rings.
Like big hoops.
Exactly. And they pass them out to the audience just to prove that there are no gaps, no secret hinges, no hidden openings or anything like that.
So they're verifiably solid.
Yes. And then standing right in front of you, the magician seemingly just melts the solid metal rings straight through each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, linking them together into a chain, and then just as effortlessly unlinking them. And the reports actually describe Bill Baker's version of this trick as being as smooth as silk in his hands.
That is so cool. So Bill Baker is providing this incredible physical stage for everyone to play on. But I actually find the structural stage they built, like the organizational philosophy of Ring 44, to be even more fascinating than the physical one.
Oh, definitely. Because the reports emphasize that their structure was fiercely democratic.
And entirely merit-based.
Right, because if you study amateur organizations, whether it's a community theater troupe or a local sports league or literally any hobby club.
They almost always fall apart because of ego.
Exactly. Human nature dictates that someone eventually wants the title of president just so they can say they're the president.
Right.
But Ring 44 recognized that specific danger, and they actively legislated against it.
Yeah, the sources are highly specific about this. They note that Ring 44 had this really rigid procedure where officers were elevated based strictly on having earned it.
Yes.
They purposefully avoided shoving someone into the presidency, and this is a direct quote from the source material, strictly for the glory.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
Because that phrase, strictly for the glory, it tells you everything you need to know about the pitfalls they were dodging.
Absolutely.
They understood this fundamental psychological truth about communities. A healthy ecosystem requires servants, not stars.
Right, because when people pursue a leadership role just for the glory, they stop serving the group.
And they start demanding the group serve them.
Exactly, and Ring 44 prevented that by instituting this really strict, almost ritualistic rhythm to their first Friday meetings.
They did, and business came first. Always.
Right. They got the paperwork, the correspondence, all of the boring planning completely out of the way.
And then before any magic happened, they observed a strict moment of silence for departed members.
Yeah, the reports from 1946 actually specifically list names being honored in that silence.
They do. They honored Everett Morgan, John Snyder Jr., and a performer known as the Great Ovette.
And only after the business and that reverence were totally complete did they finally bring in the invited guests and actually start the magic show.
Which is such a smart way to run things.
It's basically like a modern, highly moderated internet forum.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Think about it. If you go to a niche hobbyist community online today, the ones that actually survive and thrive, they have incredibly strict rules of engagement.
That's very true.
So that moment of silence and that business first rule, it's essentially the pinned read me first thread at the top of a subreddit.
How easy.
It establishes the entire culture before anyone is even allowed to post. You have moderators who are elevated because they actually do the hard work, not glory hounds looking for clout. And you have this clear boundary between the serious administration of the group and the actual fun content everyone came to see.
That analogy holds up beautifully because it gets to the core mechanism of creativity, which is that constraints breed freedom.
Oh, totally.
By dealing with the mundane business and that solemn remembrance of the dead first, they are essentially clearing the emotional deck.
Right.
They're telling their members, we have handled our responsibilities to the past and to the present. The structure is secure. Now you have actually earned the right to play and experience wonder.
Okay, so if they built this incredibly strict, ego-free container, who actually fit inside of it, like, did this structure attract a specific kind of personality?
Well, it attracted an incredibly colorful cast of characters because the structure kept the chaos out, which allowed the real personalities of the members to bring the flair.
Okay, who are we talking about?
You have to start with the comedic glue of the ring, Charlie Roskam.
Right, the official MC.
Yes. The group appointed him the official MC for the entire year. But he constantly joked that MC actually stood for more comedy. He was the guy doing all the snappy gags between acts, just making sure the energy never dipped.
And you also had some local celebrities within the group, right?
Yes. Herbert A. Lamond, or as he went by on stage, Herbie and his derby.
Herbie and his derby. I love that.
It's great. And he served as vice president, and he actually frequently acted as the Ring's reporter. He's the one who wrote up a lot of these dispatches for the magazine.
Okay.
He was quite well known locally. He even got a write-up and a photo in the Providence Journal for performing magic for servicemen at the Journal Canteen.
Now, I see the word canteen pop up a lot when reading World War II history. What did that actually look like in practice for a guy like Herbie?
Well, canteens were essentially these recreation and entertainment hubs for off-duty military personnel. They were often run by organizations like the USO.
So like a giant rec room?
Yeah, think of them as massive social halls where, soldiers could get a free cup of coffee, dance to a live band, and watch variety acts. So performing at a canteen meant you were providing direct morale support to troops who were either preparing to deploy or just coming back from active combat.
And that military influence in this 1946 timeline is just massive. Which brings us to Irving Weiner.
Yes.
He was in the U.S. Navy, and he didn't just stand up on the Baker stage and do, like, standard card flourishes.
No, he went way beyond that.
Right. He would bring serious-minded audience members up onto the stage and actually hypnotize them. And the reports explicitly note that he left the audience thinking, maybe there is something to this hypnotizing.
I mean, that's real power right there. But it wasn't all comedy and hypnosis either. There were incredibly creative, highly theatrical standouts in the group.
Like who?
Well, their president, James Glanville, performed an act that bordered on avant-garde for a local hobby club.
Really? What did he do?
He would stand at the microphone and narrate a dream he had. And while he did that, in the background, his pretty young daughter silently acted out the entire dream sequence in pantomime.
Hold on a second. I'm listening to this roster you're laying out. We've got Charlie, Herbie, Irving, Bill. It's 1946.
Yeah.
Was this just a room full of middle-aged guys smoking cigars away from their wives? Or is there actual diversity in this community? Because honestly, it sounds like it could easily just be an exclusive old boys club.
That is the natural assumption for a mid-century fraternal organization.
Yeah.
But the sources actually challenge that narrative in some surprising ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, you just brought up James Glanville featuring his daughter in a starring role in his act.
True.
But beyond that, the reports explicitly highlight upcoming events like a ladies' night scheduled for November 16th. And they mark it as a major, major event on their calendar.
Oh, and there was also the Mentalism Act, right? Carl Larkin, Neliana.
Precisely. And in everyday life, they were Arthur Clarke and his wife, Nell.
Mm-hmm.
They were a husband and wife duo who played carnivals together all over New England.
That's awesome.
And they were welcomed right onto the Baker stage as peers, doing what the reports call a very smart mental act. So while the organization was literally called the Brotherhood of Magicians, Ring 44 was actually actively folding families and female performers into the core of their community experience.
Okay, so we have the comedic MC, we have the hypnotizing sailor, and we've got the theatrical family acts. But you also had the pure tricksters, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. The guys who just loved fooling their own peers.
Yeah. The sources detail this trick by C.D. Coley Coleman. He performed a classic handkerchief-to-egg sucker trick.
Yes, the sucker trick.
Walk me through the mechanics of a sucker trick. Like, why does that work so well on an audience, especially an audience of magicians?
Well, the sucker trick is this really fascinating psychological game.
Yeah.
It plays on our deep-seated human desire to feel smart.
Okay.
Everyone wants to be in on the secret. So the magician will pretend to mess up the trick, or they will deliberately explain exactly how the illusion works.
So they are creating a false sense of superiority in the audience.
Exactly that. They let the audience believe they have peeked behind the curtain. And the tension of the magic show completely dissolves because the audience thinks they've outsmarted the performer.
And the source material says Coleman does exactly this. He explains how he is faking the egg. Everyone in the crowd is nodding along, feeling incredibly clever.
Right.
And then at the very end, he completely pulls the rug out from under them by cracking the egg into a glass to show it was actually a real egg the entire time.
It's so good. He literally fooled a room full of professional magicians by letting them think they couldn't be fooled.
That is just brilliant.
It exploits a massive cognitive blind spot. We get so easily distracted by our own ego, like our satisfaction at having caught the magician, that we completely start paying attention to the actual sleight of hand happening right in front of us.
It reminds me of another standout trick from the reports, actually. The one performed by Norman Malone.
Oh, the ropes and silks.
Yes. He would take a totally untied piece of rope and 3 securely tied silk handkerchiefs. He places all of them into a completely empty paper bag.
Right. And when he pulls them out a moment later, the silks are completely untied, and the 3 knots have magically transferred themselves onto the rope.
It is a beautiful, deeply visual transposition. But, the tricks, as impressive as they were, they only tell half the story here.
What do you mean?
Well, if you really read between the lines of these 1946 reports, the formal performances weren't actually the most important part of the night.
Really? So the tricks brought them into the room, but what actually kept them there?
The informal moments, the inside jokes, the shared milestones, the meals. That is the actual glue of this community.
Okay, let's talk about those running jokes, because honestly, nothing signifies a tight-knit community quite like a gag that only makes sense to the 20 people sitting in the room.
So true.
There was this new member named John Freites, and he did this routine where he unscrewed a dead light bulb from the footlights of the stage.
Yeah.
He magically made it light up in his bare hands, and then he turned to Bill Baker and asked if he could hang the glowing bulb over Bill's portrait. That is a brilliantly layered joke, because Bill Baker, the man who owned the theater, the guy who built the stage, he was so deeply humble that he'd actually hung his own portrait in a dark, unlit corner of the room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Freites was using his magic act to affectionately tease his host's modesty.
That is just so pure. It really shows a level of intimacy you only get when people genuinely care about each other.
Absolutely.
And you see that care in how they celebrated milestones, too. In April, they actually broke their sacred First Friday rule. They moved their meeting to the second Friday.
Which is a big deal for them.
A huge deal. And why? So they could host a joint banquet with a rival local magic group, the Society of American Magicians, Assembly Number 26.
That kind of cross-pollination between competing magic organizations, it shows a real maturity in the group. They weren't tribal at all. They were collaborative.
Yeah.
And it was at these kinds of gatherings that they really took the time to honor their own. Like when Jean Desrosiers, their retiring president, stepped down, he was presented with this beautiful past president's wand.
It wasn't just like a paper certificate. It was a physical artifact honoring his service. It recognized that he had truly earned it rather than just taking the job for the glory.
Exactly.
But let's be entirely honest here for a second. You can have the greatest card manipulators in the world in one room. You can have floating light bulbs and beautiful wooden wands.
Sure.
But whether it is 1946 or today, what is the one thing everyone in a hobby group is really looking forward to?
The buffet at the end of the night.
Always. Without fail. After the invited guests left, after the final bow was taken, the absolute highlight of the Ring 44 meeting was what the reports literally call the huge production of food prepared by Mrs. Baker and Mrs. Stubbs.
Herbie Lamont, who was writing the report, he specifically calls it an appetizing production.
Yeah.
But he adds this really highly specific qualifier.
Oh, yeah.
He makes a point to note that providing such a massive, delicious feast was a true feat in these times.
In these times. That is the phrase that really caught my eye. Because as a reader, you see all these micro interactions in the text. You read about the buffet. You see them fighting playfully over how to spell a member's name.
Oh, right. They literally make a point in a national magazine to say Fred Foshey is spelled Foshey.
Exactly. So why do these tiny, seemingly insignificant moments matter so much? Why did the secretary even bother writing down that Mrs. Baker made a good sandwich or that they argued over spelling?
You really have to look at the historical context of in these times. It is 1946. The world has just come through the absolute sheer trauma and devastation of the Second World War.
Right.
And throughout these linking ring reports, you see the constant echoes of that global conflict. You have Irving Weiner performing in his Navy uniform.
Rabbi Lamont performing at the serviceman's canteen.
Yes. You have performers coming back from USO tours, which were, entertainment circuits designed to boost the morale of troops stationed in the European theater, like the actual war zones of Europe.
The stakes were incredibly high.
Right. The world had been entirely upended, unpredictable, and violent for years.
And food rationing was a massive part of that home front experience, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Sugar, meat, butter, coffee, all of it had been strictly rationed to support the war effort. So when people finally came home, they desperately needed local, predictable, and joyous community spaces.
They needed a sanctuary.
Exactly. And Ring 44 provided exactly that. It was a physical space where the biggest, most dramatic conflict of the entire week was how to spell Fred Foshey's last name.
Wow. That makes the buffet so much more meaningful.
It really does. In an era of post-war rationing and deep economic anxiety, Mrs. Baker and Mrs. Stubbs figuring out how to feed 40 people a huge meal wasn't just a polite gesture.
Right, it wasn't just a snack.
No, it was an act of profound care. It was a restoration of normalcy. The magic tricks provided the wonder, but that buffet provided the safety.
Wow. When you frame it like that, it just completely changes how I view these reports. Let's really distill this down. By looking at a stack of linking ring trade magazines from 1946, we didn't just learn how to pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Not at all.
We saw that Rhode Island's Ring 44 was so much more than a group of guys practicing sleight of hand in a basement.
Underneath the expanding and diminishing cards, underneath the torn and restored paper routines, there was a highly organized, deeply supportive community.
Yeah.
They survived and thrived in a totally fractured post-war world because they built a strict meritocracy. They leaned on humor to bridge the gaps between them. And they understood the absolute necessity of Mrs. Baker's buffets to make people feel safe again.
I want you to think about your own life right now. Just think about your own niche passions. Maybe you are part of a guild in a massive multiplayer online game.
Or local knitting circle.
Yeah. Or a specialized tech forum, or a Sunday morning recreational sports league. The mechanics of what makes your group feel like home are the exact same mechanics that Bill Baker, Charlie Roscom, and Herbert Lamond used in 1946.
Those mechanics are totally universal. It requires a clear structure to keep the ego out. It requires willingness to laugh at inside jokes.
And most importantly, it requires someone willing to do the unglamorous work behind the scenes to make the gathering actually happen.
Which brings us right back to the image we started with.
Exactly. We talked about how easy it is to focus on the grand illusionists standing in the blinding spotlight, ignoring everything else around them. But I want you to remember that story about Bill Baker.
The man who literally owned the theater.
Right. He built the stage, and he provided the space for everyone else to shine. And he was so humble that he took his own portrait and hung it in a dark, unlit corner of the room. It took someone else magically producing a light bulb to finally illuminate him.
That is such a powerful metaphor.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over today as you go about your week. Look at your own hobby groups. Look at your own communities, whether they're online subreddits or in-person clubs. Who are the people quietly providing the stage, enforcing the structure, or making the food in the dark corners, making the magic possible for everyone else? And more importantly, how can you shine a light on them today?